Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Public Works Finance and Safety Committee meeting of January 21st, 2020. And before we get going on anything, I would like to introduce the new assistant to the mayor and city attorney, Christine Dolney. If you want to wave and stand up. Christine is here. She came from another business in Watertown, and she's been a resident of Watertown since 1995. She has over 20 years of experience working in behavioral health, crisis response, and other healthcare settings, serving Watertown and surrounding communities. And this is very unique. Christine was the co-founder and an active volunteer of the local nonprofit supporting individuals and families impacted by chronic kidney disease, the Lake Area Kidney Endowment. And we were very impressed by her work on that in her interview, and it's part of the reason that she's here. Chosen from a very good selection of well-qualified candidates, and we're excited that she has agreed to come work here. So let's welcome. So now we have Chris, Kristen, and Christine, first floor City Hall. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. I have a motion by Hoyer and a second by Bueller, I think. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item C is public input. Is there anyone here who would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item D is approval of the agenda. I have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Roby. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item E is the regular agenda, and item 1 is the council consideration of change order number 1 final with Dunnick Inc. for the Genstead Edition street construction project number 1903 for an increase of $36,618.91 for a final amount. I have that on here somewhere. Bringing the total contract price to $399,748.66. I have a motion by Lallam and a second by Holeen. And Heath, will you please tell us about this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. I apologize for the oversight on our part. We'll have that new contract amount in those titles here forth, but we skipped it on these next 3 items. So bear with us on that. We'll make that correction here for future items. But you are correct. This is the first and final change order for this project. This relates to the Genstead Edition street reconstruction project that occurred throughout the summer of 2019. And we are now at a place with this contract finally to close it out and pay the final pay application. It does amount to an increase in the change order to the tune of a little over $36,000. I can touch on a couple of those components individually that ran that number up higher than what was anticipated. One of them was the base course that was used on the project, and the other one was the asphalt concrete paving that went down on the project as well. The need for the increase on the base course was primarily driven by the wet conditions that were encountered through this project. As you'll find, not only with this project, but the next 2 that we'll touch on. And as everybody's full well aware, our construction season this last year was a very wet one. We ran into a lot of saturated conditions that caused our contractors to have to do some extra dig outs, some extra depth on excavating to get to solid ground and build from a solid base before we repaved the streets, and things that we checked off on in the field from time to time as they occurred so that we could let the construction progress, and have a good solid foundation to build the pavement on as well. So the overall change order amount, as you can see by the numbers, is approximately a little bit under 10%. the 36,000 sounds like a lot, but in relation to the original $363,000 contract, you're about at a 10% overall change order, which isn't unheard of in the construction industry. So the next two projects we'll touch on kind of trend the same way as this one does, but we'd be glad to help answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Councilman Hoyer?
Heath, how does this compare, just kind of in relation to any of the other folks that bidded for this contract? Do we know?
I don't have that information right in front of me, Councilman Hoyer. That is something I could definitely find out, though.
I would just be curious to see, after we do the 10% increase on this, how it relates to those other folks that may have bidded this at a more appropriate number from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Heath, I guess you've probably answered my question. I know we've done a lot of work with Dunix in the past and have had good results with them. I guess when you see three of them right in a row, over $100,000 in total between the three, but you're saying it is reasonable or not unexpected, and you're comfortable with the change order?
Yeah, you know, I would also state that we would strive not to see this amount of change orders on any of our projects, but it is of the ordinary to see a 6 to 8 up to 10% increase in fluctuations on quantities. The couple that I listed that, yes, particularly the base course, had to do with our plans quantities differing from actual field quantities as far as the depth of pavement that we removed from some of the roads. And then we had to account for that in new material that the contractor hauled in order to end up with a 4-inch new asphalt mat. So some of those discrepancies is something that we're wrenching down on our design end this year. We've taken a few more cores on our projects ahead of time. This winter, actually, we just got done coring our streets so that we know with more frequency, we know exactly what we've got for conditions out there today that we're going to be estimating to be removed. So we're putting measures in place to kind of try to wrench this down a little bit more accurate than what it was this last year. But also these wet conditions really were kind of an unknown factor that kind of threw a wrench in things as well, where we did have to over dig and excavate other excessive areas that we didn't plan on doing because of the wet conditions.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other questions or comments? We'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 2 is council consideration of change order number 2 final with Dunnick Inc. for the North Ridge Addition Street Reconstruction Project number 1902 for an increase of $41,427.78, bringing the total contract price to $904,662.63. Have a motion by Vilhauer and a second by Bueller. And Heath, please tell us about this one.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Again, this is the North Ridge Addition. We did several sections of streets up there in the North Ridge subdivision that were reconstructed. Unfortunately, there were a number of them that were in need. I believe we still have a couple remaining that we'll put on future projects, but we did what we could with the budget that we had for this area of town, and again, this change order came in. The couple of primary numbers to note again would be the base course again, and I believe the asphalt ran a little bit over on this one as well. But base course was a big one. We had about an 8% overrun on base course. So again, relatively speaking, in the original contract amount, not huge, but a $12,000 total in cost for base course alone. So again, I think a lot of that is due to the wet conditions that were encountered in this subdivision and the additional work that was needed to build from a sound base before we put pavement down. So glad to help answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions, council? Seeing none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. I just looked up the bid tab for the previous project, and there was only one bidder, which is often the case on these asphalt projects, fortunately. Not that we don't have a good contractor, but it's nice to have competition. Item number 3 is council consideration of change order number 1, final with Dunick, Inc. for the Parkview Drive Street Reconstruction Project number 1905 for an increase of $26,045.55 for a total project cost of $224,646.94. I have a motion by Lallam and a second by Holeen. All right, Heath? Tell us.
Thank you, Mayor. This one, too, base course was the primary overrun on this, to the tune of 17,000. So that made up a good chunk of the majority of this overall change order. And sorry, just scanning my notes here quick. This one primarily related to what I mentioned to earlier about the existing sections of asphalt and concrete that were out there. As far as the planned quantities is what was expected to be encountered. Actually ended up being thicker than that, which required additional base to build the base course layer back up to our new 4-inch mat of asphalt. So instead of the removal averaging what we thought to be 8 inches of concrete, ended up being 6 inches. So there's a 2-inch discrepancy there. Again, these are things that we're trying to front with the coring, the more frequent coring that we're going to be doing on the projects looking ahead. That gives us a better idea on estimating our quantities, trying to tighten this up a little bit so that we can avoid some of these errors. Some of the other things that we haven't been giving our projects in the design phase that I've noticed and talked with staff about as well is some amount of contingency in our estimated quantities. I think we've kind of been taking our quantities, calculating the volumes and the areas and just kind of locking in those numbers without giving any leeway or flexibility to them. And a lot of times you'll see either in the cost estimates or in the quantities some kind of a fudge factor, if you will, so that you've got some cushion there for overruns like this. So that's something we need to look at and figure out the best way to account for that in our bids going forward. I've seen other communities implement force accounts and have contingency funds set aside and the use of force accounts that way. I'm not necessarily proposing we do anything that extensive, but I just think we can be doing a little bit tighter job on the estimates, but then also how to account for these overruns by giving us some contingency in the bids up front.
All right, Councilman Albertson?
This is for Heath. When you get these overruns, we have 3 of them at $100,000. Do we have the budget to cover that, or is this going to be a shortfall now because of this, or how's that factor out?
Yes, very appropriate question, Councilman Albertson. Thank you. And of course, Kristen and I and the mayor have been in discussion on that, and we do have funds that we can take from that were remaining in 2019. Specifically, they are related to the 3rd Avenue design that was budgeted for 2019. We did not end up using that full amount in 2019, so there's the $100,000 remaining in that fund and the 212 that we can account for these expenses. And Kristen's been good to work with, help us find that, and work together on how to address that as well. So we appreciate that.
Excellent question. Other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor. Oh, do you have one?
Maybe.
Councilman Bueller?
I'd just like to make one. You know, when we see these things where we do have these additional funds that come in, that kind of creep in, I can just say over the years, you know, sometimes you get a little suspect, especially if there's a pattern with some of these folks. Because you're in the bid, and then all of a sudden we've got these cost overruns that come on these projects. And I can just say from my experience, I haven't seen where we've had any big issues with anybody ever. And of course, in this case, we didn't have a lot of options either. But it is something to consider, you know, moving forward if you see these kind of patterns come about. Thanks.
All right. There's some tricks up our sleeve that we could use if we choose to. Anything else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 4 is council consideration of a professional services agreement for services related to monthly updates, support, and technical assistance for the Geographic Information System, GIS, with First District in the amount of $20,070. And I believe this is the same as last year, and I'll let Heath tell us about this. Oh, let me get a motion. I have a motion by Lallam.
Second.
And a second by Holeen. Okay, Heath.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council.
I need to recuse myself from this one as well as the next one as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So this is our annual agreement with First District, one of several that we actually execute with First District. This one is specific to the assistance they give us in the planning and zoning and building services and GIS realms of the city functionality. Has a lot to do with our mapping and data needs and helping prep for planning commission and city council meetings and providing data in relation to applications that we've received in relations to plats and ownership parcels and preliminary plans being mapped on our GIS maps. Also to note on here that the city's public works and IT departments have been recently working with First District very closely. Ryan is our contact over there in relation to the GIS services that they provide us. And we're also looking at updating and expanding and upgrading our Esri GIS software applications. They've been great to work with. These updates will increase the uses of our GIS database, not only for engineering, but citywide. It puts a lot of helpful, valuable information right at city staff's fingertips and even the general public's fingertips. And we're continually expanding on the layers that we use in GIS and the information that we summarize in our database and how it's presented on these maps. And anyway, I just wanted to express that too, that's a component that they've been helping with us on under the realm of this contract and the services they provide within this contract. Be glad to help answer any questions anybody has. This is the same amount that we paid in 2019.
All right, thank you. Any questions, council? Doesn't look like it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 5 is council consideration of a professional services agreement for services related to the development and hosting of the City-County Geographic Information System, GIS website with First District in the amount of $4,500. I have a motion by Holeen and a second by Lallam. Right, Heath.
Thank you, Mayor. This is closely related to the last item, but it is completely separate in the manner that this relates to the web hosting that First District does. I think maybe several of you council members, and I know several members of the public, use the First District online mapping functionality that they provide. I know Adam frequents it with some of the work he's done. And that's what this contract is essentially for. It's our share, our cost share, and those services being provided to not only us, but the county, Watertown Municipal Utilities, and the Watertown Development Company. And all those agencies, as you can see in the request for council action, do split those costs. We pay the brunt of them at $4,500. Cottington County's share is $3,100. Municipal Utilities is $1,500. And Watertown Development Company pays $900 towards these annual expenses. This mapping is a little bit different than the Esri GIS mapping that we use internally. It is web-based, and it looks a little different, has a little different feel to it, and it has some different information on it as well. And it's presented a little bit differently than the more technical Esri mapping that we use internally. So that's kind of one of the primary differences.
All right, thank you, Heath. I would like to add, this is a tremendous public service that we help to provide. Anybody can use this. Our GIS on the previous one, that's ours only, and it's in-house. This is anybody can get it on their smartphone, and it's a GIS system free to the public. And if anyone needs help using that, I'm sure First District would explain it. But I use it everywhere when I'm out and about on my phone. It's geographic information right at our fingertips. So it's really nice that the city can provide this with the partners that we have. Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. I would maybe suggest that, at least for the council, I don't know to what level we'd want to do this, but we may want to consider just having a little presentation on how we can use that tool.
That's not a bad
You
idea.
know what I mean? And
That's a
it,
really
it is,
good
it's
idea.
great for planning. It's incredible. You know, it's been out for quite a while. It's been around for many, many years now, but, it's a great tool how you can layer in all the different, you know, the school districts and, you know, the substrata and the ground. And I mean, you can go from the underground up with this stuff, and it's pretty amazing, powerful tool. And it would be nice maybe for everyone to be familiarized with what the features are for that.
Right, I think that's a great idea. This is Google Maps, which everybody's familiar with, and you can use on your phone with data. So you can figure out, you know, who owns the property and information about the street and the sewers and the floodplain. It's all at your fingertips. So I think that's a good idea, Bruce. Anything else? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Yes, Councilman Vilhauer?
Now that I'm unrecused, I'd just like to put a plug in for First District in general. We are so lucky. First District encompasses a big area geographically in the eastern part of the state, but we are so fortunate to have them headquartered right here in Watertown that I hope we don't take advantage of them, but I think we do at times, but they're more than willing to help us however we can, so very good service that we get from them.
Right, we do. We use them a lot. We rely on them heavily. All right, the next item is the council approval of the Community Rating System, CRS Annual Recertification Report, and authorization for the mayor to sign the associated recertification documents. I have a motion by Holene and a second by Albertson, and I'll ask Keith to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is something that our certified floodplain manager and also our urban planner, Brandy Hanton's been working on for the last month or so here, maybe longer. A lot of information that she summarizes in this annual report, and generally speaking, this is the community rating system program that we participate in as of May 1st of 2017, I believe is when we entered the program. This is related to the National Flood Insurance Program and the reduction or discounts that they offer on flood insurance premiums for communities that participate in the community rating system. And with that involvement in that program includes our responsibility on an annual basis to provide an annual report on the findings of how we're managing our floodplain development and structures and how they're being built and the requirements that we administer upon them. So with that, I'd pass this on to Brandy, and she's, I believe, got a few quick slides to run through that summarizes the CRS program.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Heath. And so for some of you that weren't here last year, I did give this presentation, but it is kind of nice. It gives a background, and because, too, it breaks down, FEMA likes to use a lot of acronyms, so those kind of get broken down because you guys, if you didn't read that it was Community Rating System, you might question what CRS is. So basically, yeah, start out here with just the breakdown that we're involved with the CRS program, and then that is through the ISO and the NFIP. The ISO is the Insurance Services Office, and then they are the ones that manage FEMA's CRS contracts. And then the NFIP is the National Flood Insurance Program, which we participate in. And there, up on the slide, you'll see what their purpose is. And then FEMA in general is the overarching agency, and that's the Federal Emergency Management Agency that oversees the NFIP and the CRS program. And so then, what like Heath had said, we've been in the program since May 1st of 2017. So then this, with the annual recertification, this is just part of it that we have to do this to certify that we are upholding the activities that we're getting credit for. And if you look in your packet too, that's where we have all of the credited activities that we are doing. That's what I initial and then certify that we are still doing that. A lot of that is has to do with looking back at building permits that were issued in the floodplain, and then making sure that we're following up and getting the elevation certificates after finished construction. And then so we compile all that information as well as many other activities too, and then send that back to our coordinator. And Also, to reiterate, we are a Class 8, which means that we qualify for a 10% discount in the premium of flood insurance policies. And so it also gives incentive that we'll want to continue to implement activities that we can gain our rate, or, you know, up our rating and get more of a discount. So the community responsibilities for participating in this program are listed here. Kind of what I had said there with keeping the elevation certificates, keeping staff that have their CFM, whatever certification. And then, yeah, if you just kind of go through there, I don't have to read them all to you guys to save time. And then the credit activities that we are getting, that we're implementing are as follows as well. And then, so as part of that, then what's attached here with your agenda is the floodplain management annual progress report. So that is our activity 510, and so we have to go through. Our progress report is based on our Cottington County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan, and that was adopted on February 2nd of 2018, and that is good for until 2021. And so basically, we just go through that list of activity, or what do we call it? Just actions that we want to take in this time period to mitigate anything that would be impacted by flooding. And so some of our action items that we've implemented or had progress on throughout the past year are as follows. And I can elaborate on any of those too if you have questions.
Councilman Vilhauer?
As long as it's up there right on top, and I think I ask this question every year, has there been any change at all as far as the core funding for the Mahoney Creek Dam feasibility study? Where's that at by now?
Well, it hasn't been funded yet, and we're
It's the
at
same
the
answer as the
mercy-
last 5 years.
We're at the mercy of the federal government, Congress, and it seems like every year there's another hurricane that kicks us out of the running. But the money has to be budgeted for them to move forward.
So we're just
with it.
in a holding or waiting pattern on that.
Yeah, and so why I include that then is so that we do send a letter each year committing or saying that we are committed to the feasibility analysis, and I can't remember what that percentage is that we would fund.
Yeah.
But so we would go forward with the feasibility analysis if we would get funding for that, and that would be before anything would be designed or anything. So then that would come after that, but. And then, yeah, just the benefits of being in the CRS participation are up there. Does anyone have any questions?
I'd like to add that most of the work that we do is required by federal law that we do it, and the CRS program acknowledges that we're doing the work and actually documenting it and keeping records at our fingertips, which is a good idea. You don't have to keep really great records, but if you want to be in CRS, you do. So that helps us too. Councilman Vilhauer?
We have a CRS rating of, or Class 8 rating. What, I mean, is 7 better than 8, for example? I mean, what do we have to do to improve that? I mean, is it a huge difference from one step to another?
You know, I haven't looked into, well, not too much. I have a little bit, but there's activities that they have that you can apply for, and the mayor, you probably would know more, being that she's the one that got us into the initial program, and then went back with what we were doing. But I'm sure there are low-hanging fruit that we could implement.
I tried to grab up as much low-hanging fruit as possible, but there are other things that we could do that wouldn't cost much. It just is a matter of focusing on getting credit for what we're doing. Some of the things are very easy, like acquire books and put them in your library. I mean, how hard is that? It's not very hard. And documentation was a big deal. We were doing a pretty good job of documentation already. We had the records, and we just basically proved it in order to get the CRS rating. Without the CRS rating, you pay the highest floodplain premiums.
So does your premium go down as your rating
Yes.
goes up?
Yes,
Okay,
so
so
there's only one community, at least last time I heard, that's a level 1 in our whole nation. And what they're doing, they have probably a staff of 50 people to carry it out. And their rates are, 50% off, whatever, of the standard rate. So every level is a 5% decrease. So yes, we could probably, with a little bit of work, get to a 7. Getting beyond that, I think we're gonna have to add staff, and I don't think we're to that point. But probably the hardest thing for us to do is to have a person like Brandy who's on the staff, trained, and up on it, and keeping track of everything. And as long as you've gotten to that point and you can keep that momentum going, that's really good for us. And I appreciate all the work Brandy does for keeping her CRS certification, the CFM. And so that's really, really good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Was there one down there? Oh. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 7 is approval of addendum to the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Watertown and the local union 1724 of the International Association of Firefighters representing the Watertown Fire Department. Look for a motion. I have a motion by Helene and a second by Bueller. And I'll have Matt tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, you should have the document in front of you. It did not get finalized in time for the agenda, so that's why we were handing it out. Excuse me. So last year, as you'll recall, we entered into a new 3-year agreement with all 3 of our unions in the city, the fire and police, and the Association of Federal, State, County, Municipal Employees, AFSCME. With the fire and police department, we had what was called a wage reopener in anticipation of the compensation and classification study that we just recently completed. We agreed to reopen discussions on these contracts once the completion of that study was finalized. And what you have in front of you is the basically the implementation and the bargain for agreement that resulted from those conversations with the union. So just a quick rundown of what the document in front of you states. There's a few things that are in the document that are just language cleanups that don't have any substantive effect. But what it boils down to is that in this instance, the fire union agreed to implement the new wage matrix. In addition to that, the implementation that would result from that is each individual in the union would be placed on the new wage matrix at the step closest to the salary they currently make without taking a decrease. The additional piece to that is anybody that was placed on the scale and the resulting wage increase was less than 2%, they all will receive a one-time lump sum payment in 2020 that will give them the equivalent of a 2% increase year over year, 19 to 20. In addition, the city agreed to create basically 2 new levels of assignment pay for firefighters. One is a senior firefighter, which is essentially the top man seniority-wise in each shift that steps in and leads in the absence of a lieutenant. That pay for those 3 individuals will be $85 per month. We also agreed to a secondary senior firefighter that steps in lieu of the senior firefighter on occasion, but less frequently, and that would be an additional $40 per month for those 3 individuals. The final piece is that they had asked that any promoted employee would receive at least a 5% increase from their current pay when they move up to the new grade with their promotion. and they'd be placed on the step closest to that 5% increase. And let's see here, finally, 2021, we agreed to a one-step increase and a 1% cost of living adjustment on the matrix. I feel like I talked a lot, way more than usual. Do we have any questions?
Any questions? Councilman Hoyer?
So just for clarity, they're adopting the wage matrix, but they're just jumping in as close to their current wage as possible?
Correct.
I'm just making sure I understood that right. Okay.
Yep.
I guess one other random question. I know it doesn't relate directly to that. When they're looking at their compensatory time earned, when they're talking about traveling for extra education stuff, did we learn anything about, do they get a per diem or anything when they do that, or they just pick up that time and a half to help cover those expenses?
I'll defer to the finance officer.
Yeah, sorry,
on that
I
question.
jumped.
Yeah,
in
when
from our
they're
question.
traveling, they would get the per diem.
Okay,
Difference between if they're overnight or just a day travel, but no, they have the meals and the.
Okay. They just didn't mention it in the writing, so that's why I was
Right.
kind of
That's
wondering
more
about
of
it.
the on the payroll side of
Right.
the requirements.
Okay.
So.
I was just curious.
Yep.
Yeah, one piece of clarification as well is if that your current wage is below the scale entirely, then you come up to that step one on the scale. So for some of the newer employees, a lot of the effect in this particular bargaining unit is for the newer employees. Their starting wage will substantially increase, which
And,
is
and these are starting firefighters or extra staff that are seeing that?
firefighters.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 8 is approval of the addendum of the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Watertown and the Watertown Police Officers Association. I have a motion by Lalem and a second by Holleen. And Matt, I'll let you tell us about that one too.
Thank you, Mayor. By and large, very similar implementation in general. So with the police department, they had agreed to implement the new wage matrix, and each employee in the union will come in on the new wage matrix at the grade and step closest to their current wage without taking a decrease. Similarly, we will also compensate anybody that did not get at least a 2% increase with a one-time lump sum payment in 2020. What's a little different about the police department is we also agreed with them, tentative agreement that you have in front of you here, to increase longevity pay from $5.75 per year per month after 5 years of service to $8 per year per month after 5 years of service, with the caveat that the longevity pay sunsets. So essentially anybody in the police union that's hired after January 1st of 2020 now will not receive longevity pay during their tenure as a city employee. Now the theory behind that is that with a new adjustment in wages for starting employees, they should be fairly compensated right out of the gate and don't need that additional piece of longevity pay. Additionally, with the police department, we agreed to increase their assignment pay in the year 2021 to $65 per month for police training officers, $90 per month for school resource officers, and $115 per month for detectives. Along those lines of assignment pay, I would note that the new matrix actually does away with 2 assignment pays in the police union. The new matrix created a corporal position in the police department, where previously there had been corporals, but they had been paid on an assignment basis. Now it's actually a position. Additionally, there's a new position, 911 dispatcher lead, whereas previously that was just a assignment pay position. And we also agreed, similarly to the fire department, to a 1% COLA in 2021 and a 1% or a one-step increase for the members of the union.
All right. Any questions? Thank you, Matt. No questions. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item F is old business. Does anyone have old business? Councilman Vilhauer?
Where are we at? I asked a question a couple months ago as far as our road and alley, our gravel road and alley committee that was formed and started to meet. Any updates in the last couple months on that?
Heath, you want to answer that?
Absolutely, Mayor, Councilman Vilhauer. We did just recently complete digging into the archives. We had some internal assignments from the Gravel Roads Committee that I'd worked with staff on, trying to find some additional information. It kind of stemmed back to the minutes from the Urban Renewal District Board that was back in 2012, 2013 era, and more or less tried to find any written memorialization of what the original intent was in the downtown alley paving initiative. Unfortunately, we were not able to find any specifics in any minutes. I thank Lori for her time. She's helped quite a bit in doing that research. Long story short, I need to bring those findings back to that committee and get a meeting set up for us to pick up the ball and continue to carry it in whichever direction the council sees fit from here.
Any other old business? Is there any new business? No new business. So next item on the agenda is executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, and we will need to go into executive session to discuss personnel, contractual, and economic development matters, and we do not expect to take any action when we come out. So look for a motion. Have a motion by Roby and a second, is that Holleen? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.